It's a couple of days until the big round one game, Richmond versus Carlton, and that means a Tigercast weekly preview of the big game coming up. And we've got an opposition supporter on tonight to help us with that, which I think the listeners enjoy, hearing a more balanced view instead of us just all going one-way skiing. As fun as that can be sometimes, it is good to have a balanced opinion. But I'll introduce our Richmond guest first. He's a regular of the show. Grockadoc, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Michael. It's great to be back. And for all those of you who are getting sick and tired of hearing my voice, don't blame me. Blame the lounge lizard who had some technical difficulties and couldn't make it. So, yeah, just blame him, not me.
I appreciate you coming on at short notice. So Lizard's lost his phone or it's not working or something. He seems to be enjoying it. But it kind of threw me into a little bit of chaos with getting this organised, but you've been good enough to jump on board, so thank you. And ironically, the same kind of thing happened from the Carlton perspective. We were meant to have the old Dark Navies come on, but he's had some technical issues as well. But Jeremias, who's a Carlton board mod, has been kind enough to join us. Jeremias, welcome to the show, mate.
G'day, guys. Thanks for having me.
No dramas at all. Thanks for coming across to the dark side. I'm sure it'll be a good bit of fun over the next half hour, 45 minutes. We'll start off with, before we get into all the JLT and the preview and all that kind of stuff, we'll start off with a roast and the toast, because there's been a lot of stuff happening in the off-season, the AFL, with the AFL making rules and introducing new things, the stupid iPads for one, and all these different concepts. And I think there's going to be a bit in this one, the roast and the toast. But Jeremias, I've given you the toast first up. What are you going to go with?
My toast is a really simple one, and I'm sorry if it doesn't conform to what you're looking for, but my toast is really simple. Footy's back. I love a lot of other sports, basketball, soccer, cricket. I really enjoy the AFLW, especially with Carlton in it. But there's nothing quite like footy. And I reckon I speak on behalf of everyone in saying that, boy, it's good to have it back. It's a bit like Christmas Eve, isn't it?
Yeah, fair play to that,
Absolutely.
I reckon. That's a good call. And you can kind of tell that people are getting a bit over the wait for football to come around, especially on BigFooty, with some of the threads and the posts. You're like, oh God, it's just getting out of hand. And you kind of just let a lot more stuff go because people are just trying to pass the time by. But yeah, round one, very close. I think that's a very, very fair and reasonable toast.
There you go.
And Grock, I've given you the roast. You've got plenty to work with, to be honest. So what have you narrowed it down to?
I've narrowed it down to the whole topic of mental health. Obviously, we saw Dusty come out, a few days ago and say that he really struggled in 2018 with mental health, anxiety and depression. Obviously, there were a few factors with Dusty, suffering from it. Not being able to achieve the lofty heights he set for himself from 2017. Obviously, the weight of expectation for him to follow that up, that was always going to be something that he struggled with. And obviously the situation around with his dad. But my roast this week is for all those footballing pundits and supporters who are claiming all these players playing the mental health card to avoid getting drug tested. Well, I do think that is certainly a possibility for some players to be doing that. I don't think it's necessarily fair on the players who genuinely do have mental health concerns, because it's just making their issues feel less validated, and it's not worth them opening up and talking about it, because they're just going to get ridiculed, or they're just going to have people questioning whether it's genuine or not. And as a fellow sufferer of mental health issues, I think that the more we can highlight players actually coming out and speaking up about what they're feeling and how they're going about things, how they're feeling mentally and physically and stuff, I think that's something that really needs to happen, especially in football. Obviously, there is a code of conduct. A unwritten code that you don't talk about these sort of things, and that's just with society and males in general. But for me, it's something that we really need to open up about. And the AFL have been aware of mental health issues for the best part of 3 decades now. Obviously, you've had some high-profile cases in the past, and for them to only now just consider bringing in mental health experts in the actual AFL administration, I think that's something that should have happened 10 years ago at least. So that's my roast.
Yeah, that's fair enough as well. I think that a lot of the onus needs to go on to the very small handful of players that might be doing this to avoid testing. That's not a good enough thing to do either, because it's a very real issue for a lot of people, and it's something they shouldn't be hiding behind. If they do have a drug issue, they have been caught, they're better off putting their hand up and going to get help for it instead of masking it with something else, and taking away from the people who are actually suffering from it. So yeah, it's an interesting one, because I suppose Jesse Hogan was the most recent one the other day.
Yes.
I think Fremantle officially said he was out because of mental health issues and dealing with anxiety, and then it comes out in the news that he was drunk somewhere and got into something or other at a pub, and whether it was true or not, then you start getting all these people, conspiracy theorists, trying to make it something that's probably not.
Yeah, the thing with the Jesse Hogan one was interesting, that Peter Bell came out, an official from the Dockers, and actually said that Jesse Hogan was battling, alcohol issues because of his mental health, his clinical anxiety. So it sort of makes you think, does he have, the anxiety because he got drunk and all these things happened and now he's not playing, or is it the other way? Is he drinking because he does have these problems? So it's one of those ones where it's sort of a toss of the coin as to which way you can interpret it, what the statement was.
Yeah, very true. I'm sure it's an issue that's going to keep popping up as the year goes on, unfortunately. But on one hand, it's unfortunate, but on the other hand, I think more awareness needs to be raised about it, and people need to feel comfortable in all walks of life to be able to talk about it and put their hand up if they do have an issue. So for anyone out there listening, if you are feeling a bit out of the ordinary, make sure you do reach out to the right people and seek help. Don't just sit there and bottle it up.
Absolutely. Do you have a roast or anything this week, Michaels?
Well, I thought about adding it in. I was conscious of time, but the AFL, again, are probably going to cop a whack from me. This 50-metre penalty rule that they've tweaked so geniusly, they struggle to get the initial 50-metre penalty right. I mean, we all three of us saw in round one last year the amount of ridiculous 50-metre penalties paid for that encroachment bullshit penalty they wanted to do.
Yep.
But now there's going to be, I'll call it now, there'll be at least 600 to 800 metre penalties paid over the course of round one, and we'll probably have at least 4 of them in our game on Thursday night. I just don't understand the logic in it. So you're not allowed to follow the guy with the ball if you're the opposition. You can't slow him down. And they want someone else 150 metres down the field to come forward and find the mark before the umpires got there to man it. I just don't understand how it's meant to work. I just think the players who are meant to be defending are at a complete loss, and the guy with the ball is pretty much going to have free rein just to sprint off wherever he wants, because otherwise they're going to get pinged for it.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Jack Revolt against Frawley. Jack was, 6 or 7 metres ahead of Frawley running, for the 50-metre penalty, and then slowed down. So Frawley ran into the protected zone and got another 50-metre penalty for it. So it's going to be one of those rules that players are going to exploit, and the AFL really need to tweak on how they interpret it.
Did you have any game, Jeremias?
Yeah, we did have a couple, and I think there were a couple as well in the AFLW. So no one really understands it. Do we know why it was actually introduced?
It was introduced because players running alongside a player who received a 50-metre penalty, they were running alongside, so they couldn't actually play on and get teams caught out of position on the defensive thing. So they were saying there's a 2-metre zone now, so a player can actually swerve off his line to get the ball in quicker. It's just part of the AFL wanting to speed the game up again, which it doesn't need to.
I just think you're gaining, maybe 1 second of speed up every 50-metre penalty. So is that, maximum 5-second increase or speed up across the course of a game worth all this confusion? I wouldn't have thought so. I think it's a ridiculous rule that's been brought in just for the sake of bringing in a rule.
Agree. And yet again, they've brought in a rule that has no clear-cut guidelines. It's a complete grey area and based purely on one person's interpretation, which is going to be different to another's. And that's the biggest issue with the umpiring at the moment. Like, I respect what the umpires do. It's a hard job, no doubt. But the AFL haven't really helped them out at all in any way by not giving or not creating clear-cut rules. There's just so many room for error with interpretations and all that kind of stuff, and they've just thrown another one in the mix.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's 30 30 odd umpires that umpire games. So you're going to have 30 different interpretations of the rules. They need to cut that down. There needs to be, a clear-cut case of this is what we'll be paying for this rule. This is what we're not paying. Really cut it down, make it black and white for the umpires, so they're not confused and the fans aren't confused and outraged about calls or non-calls.
How are the players down the field meant to know where the 50-meter
the mark is? That's the thing.
I have no idea, because they're gonna guesstimate, stand somewhere where they think it's going to be, and the umpire's going to say too far forward, 50 metres. Like, it's just got disaster written all over it. Like, I know we're going to be barracking hard against each other on Thursday night, Jeremias, but I can promise you at the end of the game, we're all going to unite as one and discuss how poorly officiated this 50-metre penalty rule was. Like, it's nothing surer. Absolutely agreed. It's a farce. All right, we'll move on to some of the real footy stuff, because I could crap on and roast the AFL all night if you gave me half a chance. The JLT series is finished up now, so everyone played their 2 games. Richmond defeated Melbourne by 12 points in the first game and Hawthorn by 8 points in the second game. Grock, what did you take away from our JLT series?
I thought we sort of went about par for the course. Obviously, it was about trialling a lot of the younger players who, see how they fit in the current structure, whether they're right to play, senior games. Obviously, we saw Noah Bolter, Jack Ross, Riley Collier-Dawkins, and Van Soldo, play a fair amount of games, some of the ones, and Nank down forward, so we could sort of see who would be our number 2 sort of pinch hit relief ruckman. But I thought the first game we sort of tried to make it a lot more contested and a close game to sort of grind it out against sides who'll be thereabout with us and sort of change, see how we can actually, win a close game when it's on the line. And then the second game was sort of weird because we got absolutely smashed by the Hawks in the first half, and it was just we weren't clean. We were fumbling a lot, and then we sort of overrun it. So it's almost like we tried to reel back a lead in that second game, see how far behind we could get and sort of try and reel the game in. But I thought it was a really weird sort of 2 games. So it was sort of polar opposites of each other, because the Melbourne game, both teams looked really clean and crisp and, really getting into it. And that second game was just sloppy and just really mistake-ridden. So, I thought it was one of those. I thought it was just a tale of 2 games, really, where we just tried a few different tactics, and it was just par for the course. And we obviously had a few young players play a couple of games. Who do you think is most likely to get some serious AFL game time this year from our youngsters? For me, and I've told you about this bloke every time I've been on, but Jack Ross, for me. He's just one of these players who gets in and gets the job done. He's really hard at it, attacks the man and the ball. He's pretty much Jack Graham clone, but he actually gets more of the ball. I feel that he's going to be the one who really steps up this year and will probably play on Thursday night. And then Noah Bolter, obviously, he's the one who really set things alight in JLT1, and it really comes down to whether Tom Lynch plays on Thursday, and if he doesn't, Bolter will get the gig. But it just came out recently that Mav Weller is in line to play on Thursday night, so obviously Weller will be in the best 22. Obviously, that's probably going to be for Josh Caddy, because they are similar sort of type of players, the medium marking forwards who can go through the midfield. You've got Weller, you've got Jack Ross, who will be, in my opinion, will definitely be in the 22 on Thursday, and then you've got the outliers sort of Bolter, or you've got Liam Baker maybe come in. I thought he played all right in patches. So, those are Jack Ross and Noah Bolter for me were the 2 youngsters that really impressed me. Yeah, I reckon they'll get a game as well this week. And Jeremias, the Blues, you knocked off Essendon by 9 points and went down to Collingwood by 4 points. I thought you had their measure for a lot of the game, to be honest. What did you make of your JLT series, and what did you take away from it?
Let me preface this by saying that as a Carlton fan who's lived through the early to mid-2000s, I know all too well not to take the JLT results too seriously. We won a couple of Wizard Cups there in the mid-2000s, followed up by wooden spoons. Most interesting for me was the transition in the midfield. We've been very heavily reliant on our older guys in previous years, Ed Kerno, Mark Murphy in particular, but really interesting that neither of them spent any time really in the centre. Ed was playing up forward as sort of that defensive forward, which was really interesting. And Mark Murphy spent a lot of time out on the wing and recently came out and said, he's looking probably to spend a bit of time at half back. So it's really looking to fast track that midfield development. I thought defensively we were really quite strong in both games. That was a real cornerstone of our play in 2017 before obviously everything sort of went pear-shaped for us in 2018. And that happened for a number of reasons which we obviously don't have to get into right now. But really what I take out of it is it's just really good to see the boys out on the park, the new players coming into the team. Newman, I thought, settled in pretty well down back. Older players, Daisy looks to be in really good form, Liam Jones as well. And also those youngsters looking to take the next step. We've been really strong as a club on those third and fourth year players now needing to sort of step up and take the opportunity given to them and take their game to the next level. And a couple of them look like doing so, which is fantastic for the club.
Honest question. If you can give whatever honest answer it is, I don't mind. Is Liam Jones a better defender than Alex Rance? There's a lot of argy-bargy that goes on various social media platforms. From a Carlton standpoint, what do you think of the two?
He's definitely not in the league of Liam Jones. Of Alex Rance. Sort of comparing apples and oranges there. I will say that the turnaround in his game, in his career, has been unbelievable.
100%. He was done and dusted until he moved back.
Oh, completely cooked. He lost his way a bit last year, and I think that had a fair bit to do with losing the general back there, which is obviously Sam Doherty, but I think he's a year down the track, better prepared to deal with that absence, as I think we all are as a side. So from what I've seen of him in the preseason, and obviously it's only preseason, so you've got to be wary about those expectations carrying through, but he looked back to his 2017 best, which was sensational. So it will be really interesting to see how he goes. On Rance, look, I've long said I think he's exceptionally overrated. I don't think he's in the conversation with the best fullbacks to ever play the game. Having said that, he's clearly the best fullback in the league at the moment, and he's a terrific player. It will be interesting to see how he adapts to the 666, which I think sort of lends itself to not running off your man or not zoning off as much as previously, which is obviously a real strength of his. Whereas, the Grimes and Asprey have been given those more heavy responsibility of the one-on-one play with Alex zoning and running off. It will be interesting to see how the defensive unit sort of adjusts to that.
I think it's a fair call. If I was an opposition coach, I would try and make sure that Rance was on the guy starting in the goal square, as isolated as possible, because if you can get that kick to 20 or 30 metres out, yeah, he can be a little bit suspect one-on-one sometimes. You are right, he does like to zone off, so it will be interesting to see how he adapts. And Sam Walsh, obviously number one draft pick, he got his hand on the ball a bit in the games. You got high hopes for him?
Very high hopes. I posted on the forums earlier in the preseason before our first game against Hawthorn, which was a practice match only, that I thought the narrative about him had gone a bit over the top, that he was the best number one pick in God knows how long, that he was, ready to come in and play straight away and just looked terrific. And then I went to the Hawthorn game and actually saw him live, and I was actually taken aback. He's actually unbelievable. He's an incredibly professional kid. He just gets to so many contests. He's not the quickest player. He's not the most skilled player, but his will and drive to get to contest after contest is exemplary. And it actually reminds me of a footballer that you guys know all too well, your current captain, who is also not the quickest. He's not the most skilled, but he's a terrifically smart footballer. He's a brave and tough footballer, and his will to get to contests is just phenomenal.
Yeah. The one thing that really stands out for me about Walsh is his composure. Mm-hmm. He's just, especially in traffic, it's just, he takes the right option every time, no matter, how much pressure's around him, whether he's being tackled or, he's in space. He's just constantly clean with his skills, takes the right option and takes the first option, which is one of those things where a lot of players these days won't necessarily take the first option. They'll wait for the tackle and then, try and spin out of it and get a handball to a running player on the outside. But Sam Walsh, his composure, he already looks like a 200 gamer. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but he just looks like he belongs at the level already. He looks like he's been doing it for so long. I think he's going to be an absolute jet.
Yeah, they definitely found one there. You couldn't go wrong with whoever you took at number one last year, virtually.
Right. There's another Carlton player that I want to raise who I thought has been absolutely incredible in the JLT series, and that's Will Setterfield, obviously highly rated. What did you make of his JLT, Jeremias?
He just looks like a footballer, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He's got a really big body, obviously. He's a bit rusty, but obviously after a bit of time out because of injuries, that's probably to be expected, and that's fine. He looks terrific, and he can find plenty of the ball. He can drift forward and have an impact on the contest. And I think that's exactly what we need to support Patrick Cripps. We need that bigger body type who can allow Cripps to sort of not so much rest, but sort of take his game to another level by moving forward and becoming impactful on the scoreboard. We saw that a little bit last year, but injuries combined with inaccuracy, probably meant we didn't see the best of Patrick Cripps up forward at least. Obviously, we know how good he is in the midfield. But if we can get Setterfield in the midfield and Cripps up forward a little bit more, like you have done previously with Dustin Martin, it just tends to elevate their game to a whole nother level. So I think he'll be a terrific get for us. It'll take him a little while to get up to the speed of things, again, coming off that injury. But he's more advanced than where I thought he would be already, and I think he'll be a terrific footballer for us.
Yep.
No, I watched I think your first JLT, and I thought Setterfield was quite good. So definitely another one the Blues fans to keep an eye on during the year. All right, we'll take a close look now at the big game on Thursday night, Richmond versus Carlton. Before we get into it, just a quick shout out that it's Jack Rewalt and Mark Murphy's 250th games respectively, and Alex Rantz's 200th. So some fantastic milestones there for all three of those players who have been great servants of our clubs. Grock, I'll start with you, mate. What are your thoughts on the game? The footy's back. It's round one. You must be fired up.
Yeah, I'm fired up. I've got my tickets for the games. I'll be heading along to that. Probably watch the VFL practice match beforehand at Punt Road. But yeah, it's just this time of year is always exciting. You've got that sort of anxious energy. It's like at the start of the year, the first game. It's almost a combination of 6 months of preparation and hard work on studying all these new players and seeing how we've adapted and grown from the previous year. And I really think this is a little bit of a danger game given what Carlton showed in the JLT. Obviously, they're playing a lot more contested. They're a lot more open as well. They're starting to take a lot more risks than they used to. They used to play a little bit safe under Brendan Bolton because they didn't want to get heavily scored against, but they're really starting to back themselves in and pull the trigger and go. And I think with the new 6-6-6 rule, especially out of the midfield at the start, of centre bounces, I think that could be a real danger for us. We saw our backline get a little bit exposed against Hawthorn and Melbourne at stages because of, fast centre breaks and with, Patrick Cripps and everything going through their midfield. I think that could be a real danger for us. So it's something that we really need to look at and make sure that we're actually setting our structures up right to deal with a long kick in. But yeah, for me, I still think we will win. Obviously, people expecting 60, 70-point margins, I don't think that's really feasible because we don't really see those sort of margins come out in the first round of the season anyway. But yeah, I really am expecting a pretty cracking contest, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a danger game as well, and people don't like me saying that, and that's fine. But we saw what happened last year. Carlton jumped us in the first 2.5, 3 quarters, really, and they just ran out of steam effectively. Granted, we kicked a little bit inaccurately as well, but they kept themselves in the game, and I can't see why that would change, to be honest. Jeremias, what about you, mate? Your thoughts on the game? Big round one?
It's a huge game. There's always a lot of commentary leading up, isn't there, about whether or not it should be the first game. But when it all is said and done, come Thursday evening, everyone's bloody excited, and so we should be. Obviously, I reckon all the pressure is on Richmond, to be honest. Heavy favourites, and rightly so, and expected to win, and win reasonably comfortably, I would have thought. But it will be very interesting to see sort of whether Carlton can hang in there with you. And the longer we can, I think the longer we'll give ourselves a little bit of belief. There's some interesting players and matchups that I'm looking forward to. I really am crossing everything that Tom Lynch doesn't play, because the game against Gold Coast early on in last season is sort of etched into my memory forever, where I think he kicked 8.
I was actually there for that, ironically. I don't know, we were just there we took an American friend out to a game. We watched the second half, and Lynch was just unstoppable. So, yeah, we obviously hope he does play, because that'd be a great matchup for us.
And I'm also very thankful, not hopeful, because I know he's not playing, very thankful that Josh Caddy isn't playing, because he is also another similar type, obviously not to Lynch, but a similar sort of forward target that often does sort of get under our skin and impact the scoreboard quite heavily. So I'm thankful that one and possibly two of them aren't playing, which will, I think, give us a better chance. I am expecting Richmond to win. I've sort of got them winning by 3 to 4 goals. But the beauty of football is you never quite know what's going to happen. And if a team is even 2% off their game, then the other team on any given night has a chance. Big stage, so it'll be really interesting to see who sort of steps up. I think your small forwards have caused us issues in the past.
About time we turned the tables on that. For so many years, Eddie Betts, Garland, and we just had absolute blinders. Yaron, and even though he dudded us with 0 games, just always had blinders against us. So I'm glad we've been able to turn the tables on that one.
And I know Castagna isn't playing. I believe he's not playing because of injury.
Yeah, so. He's out. Yeah.
But Higgins and Butler, it's sort of enough to keep me up the night before, I reckon. Because if one of them gets off the hook, we just don't have that small, defensively minded defender to sort of try and nullify their impact. So that will be interesting to watch. Obviously, no Cruiser for us, which is a huge out.
That's massive. Well, I think I posted on your board. I reckon he makes you a 2 to 3 goal better side.
He does. He does. He's criminally underrated, I think. But we just haven't seen him at his best enough, unfortunately, because of all his injuries. So Nankervis versus Phillips is obviously going to be a big matchup. It's a massive task for Andrew Phillips. Straight up, who's had a reasonable pre-season. He's got the 2 JLT games, or 3 actually, behind him, and looked reasonable in some of them, and then not so good in another. So that's obviously a big challenge for him. We've got to see where he steps up. Obviously, Rance is a huge one. It will annoy me no end if we simply bomb it forward onto his head, because that's playing into our hands. I hope that we learn our lesson and actually play McGovern on him and use McGovern as a bit of a decoy and just draw Rance away from the football as much as possible. You know, we've still got Charlie and we've still got Harry Mackay, who are really good contested marks. And if we can just get Rance out of that area and not kick it directly down his throat, then that will help us enormously.
So on those players, I'll just get Groc's thoughts quickly. So on those 3 players that Jeremias just mentioned, so you got Mackay, Curnow, and McGovern. How would you like to see us match up on them? If we, in an ideal world, if we were to try and nullify their influence, what do we need to try and do?
For me, I think Kerno's probably the least athletic of the three. He's not the quickest in that straight line speed, whereas Mackay and McGovern do have genuine explosive off the mark speed. So for me, I'd probably set probably Astbury on Kerno. I think strength wise, that's probably the best matchup. I'd have Rance on probably Mackay, given he's taller than what McGovern is, and then I'd play Grimes on McGovern, because Grimes is reasonably athletic himself, and he does have a decent vertical leap, so be able to get up there. So I'd probably have those two matchups as well, because I can't. With the other two, I think McGovern will be the third tall in that setup. So yeah, I'd probably have Grimes on McGovern, I'd have Rance on Mackay, and I'd have Astbury on Kerno.
But so, Jeremias, you reckon that you guys might try and pull a bit of what Port Adelaide did to us and have McGovern tag Rance effectively?
Look, I hope so, because obviously we know how good Alex is, especially if you play into his hands. And I think just bombing it into his area, is playing exactly his game. It's doing exactly what he wants. So I think drawing him away from the football as much as possible will really be quite beneficial. Whether or not McGovern's up to the task, I don't know. He is very unfit at the moment. He obviously broke his back through the pre-season. He has played all JLT games or portions thereof, but he does look very short of a gallop at the moment. I'm expecting him to play, so it'll be really interesting to see what we do with him. But yeah, I'd sort of try and match McGovern up on him and sort of get Harry and Charlie away from him as much as possible to see if they can do a bit of damage on their own.
Yeah, obviously the other one that Carlton need to consider when bombing along is Nick Floston, who is another one of those intercept marking defenders who likes to break off and float in front of the pack and take those intercept marks. And it's one of those things that Carlton really need to be careful, especially if they do manage to get the ball out of the middle with a quick break. Just lower the eyes and hit up a leading target, because with that quick setup, obviously we do like to go third man up and support. So if Carlton can actually get a bit of a break through the centre with a quick clearance, they're going to find space from their players, because we don't really like to go man on man. We prefer to just stay off a little bit and come from behind or from the side to affect the contest. But yeah, I think that's something that here's another one that Carlton do need to be mindful of. And also, speaking of Nick Floston, I'd like to congratulate him for signing another 2-year deal with us, taking him to the end of 2021. Him and Rioli, who also extended until 2021, were the two who I felt we really did need to re-sign. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about us losing a lot of depth and players with getting Tom Lynch in, but those two, in my opinion, and Astbury are the three that we really do need to re-sign, because they are so integral to our structure going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Grock, I want to ask you about our inaccuracy in front of goal. It's been a massive issue for us in years gone by, and with this new 6-6-6 rule, there are going to be times in games where each team's going to dominate centre clearances for a short period, but if we don't capitalise and actually put the scoreboard pressure on it, it's going to backfire. We have this really bad habit of keeping teams in the game. Do you think, have we addressed it? Have you seen enough evidence in the JLT that we've addressed it? And are we going to be in a lot more trouble, if our inaccuracy continues?
I think we will be. Obviously, kicking for goal is something that we still struggle with. We have a few culprits that do the same thing week in, week out. Obviously, Butler, Castagna are the main two. Caddy can be hit or miss. Higgins can be hit or miss. Obviously, Higgins' set shots aren't the greatest. And then, obviously, Jack is known to miss the occasional one as well. But the biggest thing that really concerned me with, our goal kicking through the JLT is our unselfishness. And I know sometimes that can lead to goals, but other times we take the riskier option by playing on. We saw Butler a couple of times against Hawthorn market, 15 out on a slight angle and try to play on and end up getting tackled and have his shot hit the post instead of, going back and just kicking a drop punt. It's one of those things where we make things a lot harder on ourselves than we need to. You know, we do try and get the ball over the top, a loose player in the goal square, and sometimes that is the right option. But there also just seems to be a lack of game sense in that, you know, players will be getting shut down a lot quicker, you know, these days because the game is getting, you know, quicker and quicker. So teams are starting to draft, you know, the quicker and quicker players. So I do think that we do need to sort of back ourselves in from set shots a lot more than we are doing right now. We did see a lot of players, you know, try and play on and make things harder on themselves, and they have players coming in from the side to sort of spoil or tackle, and then they have to rush their shot. And we saw Hawthorn do the same thing. Isaac Smith, when he marked that ball at the top of the square and ran around and missed by 5 metres. So, yeah, I really do think our inaccuracy is something that is going to cost us games at some point this year. So we really need to nut into our heads that we'll take the percentage option. If the handball over the top isn't there, or, you know, you're directly in front in a slight angle, you know, 15, 20 metres out, just take the drop punt. Don't try anything fancy, just play the percentages. So, yeah, I think we do have a lot to work on with our goal kicking, and it is really worrying at times.
Yeah, it is. It most definitely is. It worries me a hell of a lot. And Jeremias, obviously last year the Blues didn't have the best of seasons. How important is it for the Blues to make a statement in round one? And that may not necessarily mean a win as such, whether that means a competitive effort or getting within X amount of goals. What do you think needs to happen result-wise to show your supporters that the club's moving in the right direction?
I think more than anything, it's about effort. You know, I think the narrative being pushed by the media in some circles that we're growing impatient and we need results now. I just don't see that as being accurate. I don't think that's a reality. I think that's just trying to put pressure on the club where there sort of isn't any in that regard. Obviously, we want to win more games, but first and foremost, we just want to see the effort back in the game style. We completely lost our way in 2018 after a really solid 2017. In terms of game play, in terms of defensive setup, I thought we were excellent, and we actually became renowned as a team that was pretty difficult to score against and pretty difficult to play against. You know, it might not have resulted in that many wins, but we knew that we were going to make teams earn it, whereas that was completely blown out of the window in 2018. So I think getting back to that defensive effort, defensive layers, and sort of building on the gameplay from defence is what we want to see. We want to see more effort. We want to see us in games for longer. I think fitness has a bit to do with that as well, and that is an area which I think we've improved significantly from last year to this. It's just about effort and getting that percentage out, because last year for significant periods we were simply uncompetitive. And that's not good enough. And there are reasons as to why, but it all boils down to it's just not good enough. So just seeing that effort, being difficult to play against, and being in games, or being in more games for longer than we were last year, I think is a great starting point. And getting the basics right, because I'm a very firm believer that if you get the basics right, if you get the processes right, the results will follow. But you got to get that base right. And we looked like we were doing it, as I said, in 2017. 2018, we lost our way. I'd like to think that was a bit of a blip on the radar rather than a downward trend. And I think there are reasons for that, but all will be revealed.
I think that's pretty fair and reasonable. I like most people, I don't mind if we lose, but it's if you can visibly see the players don't give a shit and aren't putting in effort, that's when it's not okay, which is what you were alluding to. So look, I think you'll see a great effort from the Blues all year round. Just hopefully maybe not so much on Thursday night. Both teams are going to have some new players, no doubt, showing their faces in round one. Grock, you touched on Mav Weller is potentially going to be playing, and you think Jack Ross is going to be playing as well. The big one that everyone really still doesn't know about, bar probably Hardwick, Barham and Lynch himself, is Tom Lynch going to play? Now, he come out and said, or Hardwick come out and said that if Lynch tells him he's right to play, he's going to play him. And then Lynch, I think today or yesterday, said, yep, I'm right to go. Are we taking them at their word, or do you think that if he was going to play, they would have just locked it in and just said, yep, he's playing, or is it dragged on long enough that he's going to sit out?
I think it's dragged on long enough that there's doubt on whether he will actually play. I mean, it came out last week. I think it was at the season launch where someone mentioned that Lynch said that he's definitely playing a game of football this week, whether it be in the AFL or whether it be in the VFL practice match against the Northern Blues at Punt Road. So I think if that is the case, I think you'd much rather play him in the VFL. In the AFL rather than the VFL practice game.
Geez, what are you talking about?
But I do think there is that little bit of doubt, given that he hasn't played a game of competitive football since July. There's still that doubt on, he has his match fitness coming up. Obviously, with the knee surgery, he didn't start, running until, mid to late January. So there's still that question mark on whether he's going to be able to run out a full game of football. So for me, I do think obviously Lynch did come out yesterday and said that I said to Dimmer to play him that he wants to play, but I still think there is that element of doubt whether he will actually line up in round one. I mean, I would like to see him, and I think that probably will happen, but I could see us taking that cautious approach with Lynch. Obviously, he's a really big investment in terms of length of contract and the money offered, so we don't really want to jeopardise that, given his history with the PCL injuries. There's just too much riding on Tom Lynch this season, as I said, in regards to what we gave up for him. So I do think that the club will err on the side of caution if they don't feel he's 100% right. So I think it's just going to come down to, 6:25 tomorrow, whether he plays or not. And it comes down to Lynch or Bolter. They confirmed that it will be Lynch or Bolter that gets named. So, it's just a wait and see. But I do expect Lynch to play.
And a one-word answer, will Brandon Ellis play on Thursday night in the AFL?
No.
Okay, yeah, I tend to agree. And Jeremias, so Carlton have obviously got some new faces as well. You mentioned McGovern and Setterfield as well. Obviously going to get some good game time. Who else are we going to have to keep an eye out for?
In terms of newer players, I think there's up to 6 new faces in the side. And I'm really itching to see sort of which way we go at team selection. McGovern, Setterfield, Nick Newman, I think will all definitely play. Newman's been terrific down back already, and sort of fits really well into that Doherty role. Sam Walsh, we know, we've touched on. The other 2 to watch out for, one was a free agent and one is actually a rookie. Alex Fasolo, coming across from Collingwood. Didn't feature in any JLT game on the comeback trail from an injury sustained from a little bit of shenanigans. Apparently was quite reasonable at VFL practice level last week. I think he's a very good chance of featuring at senior level in round 1. And the other one is a great story, and that's Michael Gibbons. We've all seen him dominate VFL level over the past 3 or 4 years, given a wonderful opportunity to take his game to that next level. Has really taken that on board and dominated through the preseason at times, on the training track in particular. Looked pretty good and dangerous at times through the JLT, but also a fair way off it at other times. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there. But he's right in the mix for senior selection come Thursday night, and wouldn't that be a story and a half?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Fasolo, Jake Nile released an article earlier this evening, and he confirmed that Fasolo will play Thursday night. So that's a great story there. Yeah, AFL.
Fantastic.
And obviously, as you said, Michael Gibbons, he's just fantastic. He's another Kane Lambert. He's not the quickest or the most talented bloke, but he just wills himself into the contest. He runs all day, gut runs. He really puts his body on the line, and it's just a reward for effort and perseverance. Obviously, it would have been easy for him to say, I've missed out on 5 or 6 drafts now. There's really no point me chasing the AFL dream. I'll just say, I'll just settle for being a VFL footballer. But he didn't. He kept putting himself out there, kept busting his ass and working it off, and now he gets a chance on a senior AFL list. So yeah, he's going to be I actually rate Gibbons, and he played a little bit of a different role at AFL level than he did at VFL. Obviously, at VFL he was more of an inside, hybrid midfielder working inside outside. But at AFL level, he was actually playing as a high half forward, going through the midfield and was hitting the scoreboard. I think he kicked 3 goals in one of the games. I think it was 3 goals in JLT1.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where he's shown he can play a multitude of positions, and versatility is important at AFL level now. So I do expect Gibbons to be another successful, VFL rookie pick.
Yeah, it's definitely
I really
another
hope
good
so.
story.
I really hope so. I love those underdog stories of guys who, were told they're not quite good enough for that many years, but persevered and kept going at it. And it's great to see him get an opportunity, obviously at Carlton, but it would be great anywhere. And I also echo those statements. I really hope he doesn't get...
And it's not so much what he brings on the field as well. Obviously, we know Carlton have a very inexperienced young list, particularly with their bottom end of players. And to have someone like Gibbons on the list who's busted his ass off for 6 years, and not gone through the conventional route of getting drafted from, under 18s, it helps with the culture around the club. Obviously, he's going to be an example of, to the younger players on this is how hard you have to work if you really do want to make it. Obviously, he's going to be a prime example to them of, it's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows as an AFL footballer. You need to take the good with the bad and, just keep putting yourself, forward, just keep going, keep pushing through. And if you work hard enough and you want it enough, you will, succeed.
All right, well, we've almost run out of time, but we do have a question that's come through from a listener on Twitter from Tigers42020. He's actually given us a question each. So, Jeremias, for you, how far up the ladder do you think Carlton can go this season?
I actually posted about this tonight on the Carlton board. I've got us at the moment sitting in 16th. But given how even the competition is, not a lot has to go right or wrong for teams to move up or down pretty dramatically. We saw that last year with Carlton. We had a stack of injuries, we lost our way, and we sort of plummeted a long way down. It can happen to clubs, and it's just particularly around injuries where you just can't control that sort of thing. And if it sort of gets a bit out of control, you can stumble pretty badly. So at the moment, I've got us 16th, but I think there's a very valid argument that we could finish above, as many as 5 or 6. But at the moment, I'd still back us in for the bottom 4 for this year. 16th, as I said, but 2020, I think, is the year that we can rise pretty rapidly.
Fair enough. And Grockadoc, I'll give you the question he posed for me because the one he was going to give to you was about Lynch, and you've already covered that anyway. So, who gets the wing spot that isn't McIntosh's? So Bolter or Brandon Ellis, and why?
For me, I'd give it to Noah Bolter. I think we've hit that point with Brandon Ellis now where he's 25, 26, and we know what he's going to give us at AFL level. Obviously, his composure and things aren't quite up to standard, particularly if he is going to float back like wingmen do need to do. They need to be able to, float back or go forward depending on which side has the ball. And I think that Brendan Ellis is a liability with the ball, especially when pressure is applied to him. And I just think we sort of hit the wall with Brendan Ellis where he's a known quantity. We know sometimes he's going to be good enough, sometimes he isn't. And I do think that Bolter, in my opinion, has more tricks to his bow than what Brendan Ellis does. Obviously, with his height and his athleticism, he's great in the air. He's got a booming kick, so he can play a variety of positions, not just on the wing. So I do think we're better off playing Bolter over Ellis.
Yeah, agree, and that's why I put it to you because I knew your answer was going to be the same as mine. So fully agree with that. All right, before I let you both go, we'll get a tip, including margin from you both. So you have something, Grock?
There's just some news coming out of the AFL that I'd like to bring up and get your thoughts on. Is the AFL introduced a new concept for round 1 as a revamp of the score review process, and they're calling it AFL Edge. which is basically Snicko for AFL. So it's going to be used with microphones installed into the goalposts to determine whether a ball has touched the goalpost or not. So I was just wondering on your guys' thoughts on that, whether it's, about time they finally did something, or whether it's just going to be another one that they're bringing in for the sake of, trying to actually be seen as fixing something that's broken, because we know the score review system doesn't work to what we expect and want it to. So just like to get your thoughts on that, guys.
My answer's fairly short. I've got no doubt within 2 weeks I'll be doing a Tigercast takedown on that exact thing they're trying to bring in, because they're gonna balls it up.
I think the concept behind it is the correct one. Whether or not they apply it correctly remains to be seen. I'm a bit skeptical, given it's the AFL and they seem to stuff up more than they don't. But seriously, this goal line technology stuff is long overdue. Get it right once and for all. It shouldn't be an issue, really, in this day and age. It just should not be an issue. We see cricket do it fantastically well with Hotspot and Snicko. Why we can't get that technology on the goalposts is beyond me. So if this is a step towards that, then I'm all for it. But I wait and see with bated breath, and I wonder if something will happen on Thursday night.
Yeah, I agree. It's a step in the right direction, but it's another one of those things where it sounds good in theory, but practicality is going to be a whole different thing. Obviously, with Hotspot and everything, with Snicko, you've got to factor in crowd noise and everything else. So there's going to be a lot more ambient noise in an AFL ground than there is out on a cricket pitch. So they need to sort of find that medium where they can focus in on the actual sounds the ball makes when it hits the post to make sure it actually works properly. And yeah, I can see they're having some teething problems with it early, but this shows that they're actually trying to take a step in the right direction and not just focus on that horrible, score review system they have now with the grainy TV footage and camera work and shoddy angles. So, yeah, I'm glad they're trying to rectify it, but I still think there'll be teething issues with it.
My question about this technology is why now? Why have these teething issues in the regular season? Haven't we just had 3 weeks of practice matches plus AFLX before that?
Exactly.
Why now are they introducing it? Don't tell me that they just signed the contract, because I don't believe that for a second. They've had a long time to iron any clinks out and get rid of any issues that might arise, and they're bringing it in for round one. It's a very odd decision, but I can't say I'm surprised.
No one should be surprised by anything they do at AFL House with the way things have gone recently. Yeah, interesting to see how that one plays out. I think it's going to end in tears, but I'm happy to be proven wrong though. But yeah, before I let you guys go, we'll get a tip including margin. Grock, I'll start with you.
For me, Richmond by 27. I think it'll be a comfortable win. I think Carlton will challenge us in parts, but I do think we'll be on top most of the night.
Jeremias?
Yeah, pretty similar at my end, guys. I have Richmond by 4 goals. I'd love to see an upset, but can't see it happening on Thursday night. Just hope for a competitive game, and the longer that we can stick with you guys, the better.
I think it's going to play out fairly similar to last year. I think you'll be thereabouts for the first 2.5, 3 quarters, but I think long run we might run over the top of the end, and yeah, similar to you guys, about 4 or 5 goals. It really just comes down to if we're accurate or not, and how our defence stands up under the pressure of the 666 rule. But should be a cracking game nonetheless. And just a reminder about the game, it's Thursday night, MCG 7:20pm, and it's live on Channel 7 and Foxtel. And if anyone hasn't already, make sure you sign up to our various competitions on the board. There's the tipping comp, the Grock's goal kicking knockout comp, my closest to the pin comp for the free kick differential, because we're going to get reamed again this year, no doubt. And Jaster's running the fantasy football comp, so make sure you get around those. All right, well, Grockadoc and Jeremias, thank you so much again for coming on, guys, at such short notice. Really appreciate it. Round one's going to be an absolute belter, and look forward to seeing you all there on Thursday night. Go Tigers. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and YouTube so you can follow all the roast and toast, the reviews and previews, and all topics Richmond. Also keep an ear out for our special episodes of interviews with past players. Go Tigers.